This Torah class is brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. Shalom Aleichem. Thank you, everybody, for coming. Before we begin, public service announcement. I'm here to do you a very big favor. Instead of getting Lego or other expensive items, you could get my new Sefer for Chanukah. Well, first of all, this is hot off the press on Sefer Shemais. Everybody needs this, everybody wants this. It's good for 3-year-olds, it's good for whoever you need a Chanukah present for. This is the perfect age for them. And also they need it in English as well. This one is on Shemais, and this one is on Chanukah. Okay, in English. No, that one's not brand new. They have it. Even if you have it, you could always buy another one. It's okay. Okay, we have a very important shiur today. The Gemara tells us in Masechta Shabbos. Amar Rav Huna, Haragil bener havyin le banim tamidei chachamim. One who is accustomed to lighting the ner. Rashi explains this refers to ner Shabbos and specifically ner Chanukah. Will have sons who are tamidei chachamim, which is every parent's dream and is the greatest bracha available in this world. Banim talmidei chachamim. And there are not that many mitzvahs or segulais mentioned in Shas to have banim talmidei chachamim, and yet Rav Huna says one who is proficient, one who frequently lights ner Chanukah, one who lights it correctly, will have sons who are talmidei chachamim. And the question that probably is on everybody's mind, but perhaps we're too afraid to ask, but this question is raised by none other than Rabbi Yitzchak Sagi Nahar. Who is Rabbi Yitzchak Sagi Nahar? Rabbi Yitzchak Sagi Nahar was the son of the Ravid. Now, it's very interesting to note that there are 3 Ravids in history. 3 Ravids. There is Rabbi Avram ben David, who was born in the year 1110, who wrote something called the Sefer HaKabbalah. Not that Ravid. There is Rabbi Avram Av Bezdin, the second Ravid, father-in-law of the third Ravid. Not that Ravid. Then there is the third Ravid. The third Ravid is known as Rabbi Avram ben David of Pokiers. He too was born in the year 1110. And he wrote Hasagos on the Rambam. So if you open up any Rambam, you'll notice there are little footnotes on the Rambam written by the Ravid. He also wrote a commentary on the Sefer HaYetzirah, on the Teiras Kohanim. He also wrote a commentary on the Rif. And his son was known as Rabbeinu Yitzchak Sagi Nahar, Rabbi Yitzchak the Blind. Rabbi Yitzchak Sagi Nahar is the father of Kabbalah. All Kabbalistic wisdom was transmitted by the son of the Ravid the third, Rabbi Yitzchak Sagi Nahar. He wrote a little compilation, and this is, as far as I know, the only writings we have of Rabbi Yitzchak Sagi Nahar. He wrote something called Soid Kuntras Hadlakas Neiros Chanukah, the secret of lighting the Neiros of Chanukah. And the only place that this is available is in the back of something called the Sefer HaZikaron of Rav Hutner. In the back, they republished this little work, and this, of course, was written by one of the great Rishonim. Rabbi Yitzchak Sagi Nahar asked the question that we don't have the courage to ask, but we would like to ask the question. And that is, how could the Gemara say that anybody who lights Ner Chanukah will have sons who are Talmidei Chachamim? Everyone lights Ner Chanukah. Every observant Jew, every Shomer Torah Mitzvahs lights Ner Chanukah. And not everyone is zoichet to this great bracha of banim talmidei chachamim. So what exactly are we missing? Rav Huna says, haragil bener, one who frequently lights the ner Chanukah is vouchsafed to have sons who are talmidei chachamim, and yet we know everybody lights the menorah, and not everyone is zoichet to this blessing. Says Rabbi Yitzchak Sagi Nahar, that may be true that everyone lights the menorah, but not everybody lights the menorah correctly. There are many details, there are many minutiae, there are chumras, there are elements of lighting the menorah, then not everybody lights correctly. Yes, everyone lights the menorah. Everybody goes to the store, they buy the $45 package with the pre-made easy lights or whatever you use, and everyone lights it, but not everyone lights it correctly. For instance, I'll give you one little halacha that I don't think even 5% of people do. Now, don't go home and tell your husband, you don't light the menorah properly. Just send them the link on Torah anytime, okay? But this is the first important halacha to bear in mind. The Gemara tells us, Hadlaka oisa mitzvah, which means the mitzvah is not that the candle should burn, the mitzvah is to light it. Light it does not mean you put wick on wick, and as soon as it catches fire, you move on to candle number 2. If you do that, according to many poskim, you're not yotzei the mitzvah even. What you need to do is you need to hold the wick on the wick until the majority of the flame that is going to burn catches fire. So that takes about another couple of moments until the fire spreads to the majority of the wick that will burn. That's just one example of the details of Hadlakas Ner Chanukah that many people do not fulfill. But says Rabbi Yitzchak Sagi Nohar, if people would fulfill all the punctilious details of Hadlakas Ner Chanukah, they are assured they will be Zoicha to Banim Talmidei Chachamim. Okay. Comes Rabbi Yerucham Olshin, a Shiva of Lakewood, and he says that this answer is not completely satisfying. Because there are many people who are familiar with these halachas. And there are many people who are careful to light the menorah with all the details. By the way, there are many details, including the precise time to light. Precise time to light is not when, okay, is everybody ready? Now let's light. There are exact times, exact windows to light. According to Rabbi Moshe, maybe between 13 and 18, 15 and 22, Rabbi Aaron Cutler, whatever, you should find out what is your personal shita, what does your Rav recommend, and follow that window. But as Rabbi Yerucham Olshin, there are many people who light the menorah, following all the details, following all the minutiae, fulfilling all the halachas, and yet we're still awaiting that guarantee that the Gemara says, Haragil bener havin le banim talmidei chachamim. So I want to share with you an astounding statement of the author of Kelm, really a very shocking statement. He writes in the Sefer Chachma U'Musar in number 5, he says, Ani u'kiyoitzi me and all of my associates. Loi kiyamnu miyameinu mitzvahs Chanukah. We have never fulfilled the mitzvah of lighting the menorah. That's a pretty, I guess, the honest admission that he says him and anyone who he knows have never lit the menorah properly. So what exactly are they missing? The oil could be more pure. The menorah could be more expensive. What exactly are we lacking in the fulfillment of the mitzvah of Hadlakas Ner Chanukah? Please take a look at number 6. We have a comment of the Rambam. The Rambam says, you don't have a sheet? That's terrible. Here's one more. Do we have enough? No. Okay, the Rambam says like this. Mitzvahs Ner Chanukah. Mitzvah chavivahi ad ma'od. The mitzvah of lighting the Ner Chanukah is very beloved. That's a very important statement and a very surprising statement. Because by no other mitzvah does the Rambam say that this mitzvah is a very beloved mitzvah. The Rambam doesn't say mitzvahs Kriya Shema is a very beloved mitzvah. Lighting Ner Shabbos, he doesn't even say is a very beloved mitzvah. He doesn't say wearing tefillin is a very beloved mitzvah. What exactly is so beloved about Ner Chanukah? You know, the Gemara tells us that if somebody is so poor and they can't buy Ner Chanukah, they should sell their clothing to buy Ner Chanukah. That does not apply to any other mitzvah. One is not obligated to sell their clothing to fulfill tzitzis or tefillin or any other mitzvah or to buy food for Shabbos. Why is one required to sell their clothing to buy Ner Chanukah? What is so significant? What is so important about Ner Chanukah? Why is it so beloved? Asks the author of Kelm, Ma kol hacharada hazois. What is all this commotion? What is all this fanfare about the mitzvah of Ner Chanukah? So with your permission, I want to draw your attention to the words of the Gemara in Masechta Shabbos that describe the legislation of Chanukah. After all, does anybody... I just gave it away, but the legislation of Chanukah is found in Masechta Shabbos. What's it doing in Masechta Shabbos? Because on Masechta Shabbos it talks about lighting the Ner Shabbos in Parak Bamem Alikin. So once in the course of conversation it talks about lighting the Ner Shabbos, Agavorcha, it mentions lighting Ner Chanukah. So the Gemara tells us the Yevanim went into the Heichal and they contaminated all the oil in the Heichal. And then the Chashmonaim came in and they searched and they found one flask of oil that was enough to light for one night. And lo and behold, it lasted for 8 nights. Says the Gemara, L'shana Acheres, in year 2, Kavam, they established, Va'asam, and they made, Yamim Toivim, Yomtiv. What kind of Yomtiv? We know Chanukah is not a Yomtiv. You're allowed to do Malach on Chanukah. So the Gemara says Chanukah is a Yomtiv in 2 ways. Behalel, what does Halel mean? Say Halel. You got to say Halel for 8 days of Chanukah. The definition of Chanukah is Halel. And then the Gemara says V'hoida, and thanking Hashem, which means that what is the definition of Chanukah? Recitation of Halel and thanking Hashem. The Gemara seems to have omitted the main mitzvah of Chanukah, which is lighting the menorah. Could you imagine? The Gemara says, what's Chanukah? Say Hallel, thank Hashem, and the Gemara doesn't say to light the menorah. You ever hear of such a thing? This is the entire Gemara about Chanukah, and the Gemara doesn't say on Chanukah you need to light the menorah. That's the whole reason why the story of Chanukah is mentioned in Masechta Shabbos, because it's the parak about lighting Ner Shabbos, and Agavorcha you would expect it to say to light the menorah. The Gemara doesn't say to light the menorah. What's going on? But what does the Gemara say? The Gemara says Hallel. And the Gemara says, Haida, thank Hashem. So how do you thank Hashem? So Rashi says, you know how you thank Hashem? You say, Al Hanisim. Now that's a very big chiddush. That means the Gemara is saying, what's Chanukah? Say Hallel and say Al Hanisim. Now what's the halacha if somebody forgot Al Hanisim? Do they have to repeat Shemona Esrei? No, you don't have to repeat Shemona Esrei. But if the definition of Chanukah is say Hallel and thank Hashem and Al Hanisim, that means even though if you don't say Al Hanisim, you don't have to repeat Shemona Esrei. But if you didn't say Al Hanisim, you didn't celebrate Chanukah. In other words, you don't have to repeat Shemona Esrei, but you also didn't do Chanukah. You missed the boat. You could have eaten latkes, you could have eaten donuts, but you didn't fulfill the main mitzvah of Chanukah, which is Hallel and Al Hanisim. If we look in the Rambam, when the Rambam, so to speak, paraphrases this Gemara, the Rambam is found in number 12. Look in the words of the Rambam. The Rambam says, Umipnei zeh, because of this miracle, Hiskinu chachamim shaba'isei hadar, the sages of that generation enacted, sheyu shmoinas hayomim ha'elu, that these 8 days, shetchilasan milel chamish ve'esrim Kislev, beginning on the 25th day of Kislev. What is Chanukah? The Rambam is now paraphrasing the Gemara. Simcha, days of happiness. Now the Gemara doesn't say that. So there's a big discussion. What does the Rambam mean that they're days of happiness? Hallel. And look what the Rambam says. Umadlikin bohen neiros, and we light the Ner Chanukah. But the Gemara didn't say we light the Ner Chanukah. What did the Gemara say instead of lighting the Ner Chanukah? The Gemara says, say Al Hanisim. The Rambam doesn't say to say Al Hanisim on Chanukah. Does the Rambam hold you don't have to say Al Hanisim on Chanukah? It's interesting. If you look in the Rambam in Hilchos Tefillah, the Rambam says on Chanukah and Purim, say Al Hanisim. See, we learn from here a very important idea. that according to the Rambam, the recitation of Al Anisim is not obligatory because of the Yom Tiv, but rather it's an obligation of davening. If you're going to daven, you got to say what the day is, and the day is Chanukah, and therefore you have to say Al Anisim, not as a legislation of Chanukah, but as a legislation of the proper way to daven at this time of the year. In other words, the Rambam holds that if you omit Al Anisim, not only do you not have to repeat the Shemona Esrei, you also didn't really miss anything too critical, because Al Anisim is not fundamental to Chanukah. It's only part of the Shemona Esrei, and if you omit it, you don't have to say it again. So let's just sum up what our questions are, and then you'll see where we're going. The Gemara, in phrasing the legislation of Chanukah, says Chanukah is two things: Hallel and Hoidah. Thanking Hashem. What did the Gemara omit? Lighting the candles. The Rambam mentions lighting the candles. What did the Rambam omit? Thanking Hashem. So we have a great mystery over here. The Gemara omitted the main legislation of Chanukah, namely lighting the candles, and the Rambam forgot to write that on Chanukah you need to thank Hashem. So there was a great Rav in Yerushalayim by the name of Rav Betzalel Zolti. And this is a Chiddush that is advanced by Rav Shlomo Zalman Auerbach as well. And this really revolutionizes and changes our entire perspective on lighting the menorah. If I were to ask you, why do we light Ner Shabbos? What's the answer? Because it's a mitzvah in the Torah. God said to light candles for Shabbos. If I were to ask you, why does a man put on tefillin? What's the reason? Kach tzivani haboire. And if a person thinks while they're putting on tefillin, I'm fulfilling the mitzvah of tefillin, they're yaitse. If I were to ask you, why do we fulfill a mitzvah in the Torah? The answer is, because the Rebbeinu Shalom commanded us to fulfill the mitzvah. Not so Ner Chanukah. Ner Chanukah is different than every other mitzvah. If we look at number 18, number 18 is what is from what is called Piskei Riaz. This is how one of the Rishonim, the Riaz, rephrases the Gemara. The Riaz says, L'shana acheres, in year 2, Kavam va'asam shmoina yamim. They established and they made 8 days. Shegoimrim bohenes ha'halal, that we complete the halal. So far so good, right? The Gemara said halal, so he says halal. Look at this. Umoidim al hanes b'hadlokas haneros. We thank Hashem by lighting the candles. We ask the question, why did the Rambam not say that on Chanukah you have to light the menorah? Why did the Gemara omit that? We asked on the Rambam, why did the Rambam not say that on Chanukah you have to thank Hashem? The answer is, nobody omitted anything. They're just focusing on a different aspect of the mitzvah. Do you know what the mitzvah of lighting Ner Chanukah is? The mitzvah is to thank HaKadosh Baruch Hu. How do we thank HaKadosh Baruch Hu? By lighting the menorah. There is no mitzvah on Chanukah to take a burning candle and light another candle. There is no mitzvah, not midoraisa or midrabanan, to light Ner Chanukah. That mitzvah does not exist. The rabbis never legislated it. It was never given to the Jewish people. There is no mitzvah of lighting the menorah. So what's the mitzvah? The mitzvah is to thank Hashem. How do you express your feelings of gratitude? By lighting the menorah. Umadlikin umoidim al hanes behadlakas haneros. We thank Hashem for the miracle by lighting the menorah. There are different ways of expressing gratitude. The way the Chachamim have legislated that we express our gratitude to HaKadosh Baruch Hu is by lighting the menorah. So what would happen if somebody went over to the menorah at exactly 15 minutes after Shkia, according to Rav Moshe, which is exact proper time, and they held the candle there for 17 seconds, and they have the best oil and the best wick, and they forgot, or they never knew, that the purpose of lighting the menorah is to thank HaKadosh Baruch Hu? Says Rabbi Zalach, Lo Yatza, they didn't do a mitzvah. They did not fulfill the mitzvah. Rav Shlomo Zalman says, Chasar Lo Ha'ikar, you're missing the main part of the mitzvah. Rabbi Zalach said, you didn't even fulfill the mitzvah. Now that's a very heavy responsibility and a very critical piece of information to be aware of when it comes to lighting the menorah. That the lighting of the menorah is fundamentally different than every other mitzvah in the Torah. Every other mitzvah isn't a dry act. There is no dry act of lighting the menorah. The lighting of the menorah is an expression of gratitude to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So you say, where does this come from? Who says such a thing? It says of Shlomo Zalman, we say this explicitly. Haneros halalu anachnu madlikim kidei lahaydais. And she was just going to say that like Rav Shlomo Zalman also. So, the purpose of lighting the menorah is as an expression of gratitude. That's what we say explicitly. And haneros halalu koydeshem ve'ein lanu reshus l'hishtamisham kidei lahaydais. We light the menorah in order to thank Hashem. Now, why is thanking HaKadosh Baruch Hu so important? There is a particular mitzvah. If you're a farmer, raise your hand if you're a farmer. If you're a farmer living in Eretz Yisrael and you have a field, you plowed your field, you fertilized your field, and you watered your field, and the whole winter you're davening, you should have a good crop, and you see the tree, it's starting to blossom, and you look at your fig tree and you see this beautiful big fig is starting to ripen. So the Mishnah tells us you take a reed, you wrap it around the fig, and you say, this first fig, this is going to be my first fruit, this is going to be Bikurim. And that pomegranate, the first pomegranate, that's going to be the first fruit, that's going to be my Bikurim. And when all your first fruits are ready, you gather together in a basket coated with gold, and you put it on an ox. And the ox has a wreath in its horns. And all your neighbors gather together in the center of the city, in the Rechayva Shalir. And when everyone's ready to go, you sleep the night in the center of the city, and then everyone marches to Yerushalayim, and the Mishnayos and Bikurim tell us that the farmers in Yerushalayim, as the Mevi'ei Bikurim are walking through the streets of Yerushalayim, they stop, they stand up, they say, Oim dais hayu ragleinu b'sharayich Yerushalayim. They say samachtim ba'oimrim li beis Hashem nelech. This is the greatest procession in all Jewish observance. It's done with the greatest pomp and ceremony, the mitzvah of bringing the first fruits to Yerushalayim. So just about 10 days ago, I had the zchus to be in the city of Tzfas, in the shul of the Al-Shech HaKadosh. The Al-Shech HaKadosh on Parshas Kisavai wonders, what's the whole rash? What's the pomp and ceremony? Why do we make such a big deal about Bikurim? It's just a fig. It's just a pomegranate. What exactly is this person doing already? And the Al-Shech writes on the words Bereishis bara Elokim Bishvil Bikurim Shenikru Reishis bara Elokim, that the Rebbeinu Shalom created the world for the mitzvah Bikurim. What is so important about the mitzvah Bikurim? Says the Al-Shech HaKadosh. What is the purpose of all the mitzvahs that we perform? Every mitzvah, the overarching tachlis, objective of all avodas Hashem. Says the Al-Shech HaKadosh, we make a very big mistake. We think, Hashem gave us a house, and we go to the sofer, and for $100 we buy a mezuzah, and we put up the mezuzah, and we say, Hashem, look, I did a mitzvah, I did a mezuzah, reward me. Or somebody, their son became bar mitzvah, so you go, you buy a pair of tefillin for $2,000, you put it on the kid, and then you say, Rebbeinu Shalom, look what I gave you. I bought tefillin for my son, he did a mitzvah. Reward me, says the Alshich. A chutzpah noira, for a person to think they're deserving of reward for a mitzvah. The Rebbeinu Shalom gave you a house. There's a lot of value in Flatbush. You could buy 3 houses anywhere else for the same value. So what are you giving back to Hashem? How are you showing Hashem gratitude for giving you the house? Because you bought a few mezuzahs, and now you say, Rebbeinu Shalom, I thanked you, now reward me. That was the small token gesture of gratitude you offered HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that He gave you the house. Rebbeinu Shalom gave an arm, so we have a mitzvah of tefillin to show gratitude. Now you want reward for the token of gratitude? Imagine somebody comes to your house and you serve them a 10-course meal, and you wait on them, and you sit on them, and you set up for them, and you clean up, and then they say, thank you. Oh, thank you. You know what you owe me for that? Thank you. I want another meal now. The door is that way. But we have a notion that when we show gratitude to HaKadosh Baruch Hu by performing mitzvahs, that we're entitled to expect reward for saying thank you to Him. Says the Alshich HaKadosh, the purpose of all mitzvahs, at their core, at their root, is simply to acknowledge, Rebbeinu Shalom, you created me, you sustain me. If you wake up in the morning and you don't have a pounding headache, that means 50 trillion different processes have to be going correctly. And even if you do have a pounding headache, the fact that everything else was working is hafle v'fela pile plaim. The least we could do is be mispalel HaKadosh Baruch Hu and do the mitzvahs He asks us. All the mitzvahs, the purpose of all mitzvahs is just a token gesture of gratitude. And it's an even greater chesed that the Rebbeinu Shalom says, you know what, and when you say thank you, I'll reward you for saying thank you. But says the Alshich HaKadosh, there's certain mitzvahs where the performance of them, it is more clear that they are an expression of gratitude. For instance, bikurim, or what are you saying by bringing bikurim? He's saying, Rebbeinu Shalom, you gave me a field, you gave me the resources to own it, to cultivate it, to develop it, to produce peiros. Here's one fruit. Thank you, Rebbeinu Shalom. So there it is clear the purpose of the mitzvah is as an expression of gratitude. Therefore, Bereshis bara Elokim. God created the world for the mitzvah of bikurim. If I could bring to your attention the immortal words of the Ramban. The Ramban at the end of Parshas Bay talks about the Mishnah in Pirkei Avos, number 26. The Ramban tells us that in Pirkei Avos, the Tana encourages the Jewish people, have a zahir b'mitzvah kala kechamura. Be careful in a small mitzvah like a great mitzvah. Why? She'ein atem yodei aschar shel mitzvahs, because we don't know the reward for mitzvahs. Says Ramban, why do we have to be so careful to do a small mitzvah? Says Ramban, very important words. On the 3rd line, the Ramban says, Kavanas kol ha-mitzvahs, the intent of all mitzvahs. Shenamin be'elokeinu, that we should believe in HaKadosh Baruch Hu. V'noide elav, and thank Him. Shehu bera'anu, that He created us. V'hi kavanas hayitzira. That is why the Rebbeinu Shalom created the world. In other words, when you do a mitzvah, you should think, you know what? I don't fully understand why I'm doing the mitzvah, but at the very basic level, Rebbeinu Shalom, you asked me to do this, and I thank you. And this is my expression of thanks. I'm lighting Ner Shabbos. Thank you, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. When we daven to Hashem, you ask most people, what's davening? Well, I have a list of all the things that I need, and I'm asking Hashem to heal, to bless, to cure, to give. That's not davening. Do you have a list of the things that you're thanking Hashem for? That's the definition of davening. That's the purpose of all mitzvahs, to thank HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Therefore, says the Ramban, it really doesn't matter whether a mitzvah is small or large or great or medium-sized. every mitzvah could fulfill the tafkid of the entire creation, which is thanking HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Now, says Rabbi Jalti, every mitzvah at its core, at its root, is a way of thanking Hashem. But there is one very precious mitzvah that we're given that is not just the objective of that mitzvah to thank Hashem, but that is the very definition of the mitzvah, that the mitzvah was legislated as an expression of gratitude. And if we would ever have such a mitzvah, that mitzvah would be probably the most beloved of all the mitzvahs in the Torah. Why? Because the objective of all mitzvahs and the objective of all creation is to thank Hashem. So if there was ever a mitzvah that its very expression was an expression of gratitude, that would be the most beloved mitzvah in the Torah. Says Rabbi Jalti, there is one mitzvah. There is one mitzvah where it's not just we could philosophize and study what's the core of the mitzvah. There is one mitzvah that by very definition, the act of performing that mitzvah is a deep expression of gratitude, and that is the mitzvah of Hadlakas Ner Chanukah. And therefore, in a certain sense, it is the most important act that we do the entire year. Because while all other mitzvahs, we do them, and on some level we understand and we recognize what the Ramban says, the kavana of all mitzvahs is to acknowledge HaKadosh Baruch Hu and to thank HaKadosh Baruch Hu, but the mitzvah of Ner Chanukah was legislated as an expression of gratitude, therefore it fulfills the tachlis of entire creation and all the mitzvahs in the Torah. And therefore, says Rabbi Rucham Olshan, if somebody were to light the Ner Chanukah, fully aware and cognizant and mindful that they're not just doing a mitzvah like Tkiyah Shofar or Netilas Lulav, which we do it because God said, and of course everything we do is an expression of gratitude. But if a person lit the menorah with a heart overflowing with gratitude to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, then they could take it to the bank, they could access, no question, no doubts, not probably, not maybe, the great Havtacha of Rav Huna, Haragil Bener Havyin La Banim Talmidei Chachamim, and take it to the bank. Because by fulfilling this mitzvah for its intended purpose, you're not only fulfilling the objective of all the mitzvahs in the Torah, you're fulfilling the objective of all of creation. So I'm going to tell you a story. I'm not a storyteller. I don't even believe the story's ever happened. But only a story that it doesn't matter if it happened or not is a good story, because at least it's a good mashal. But here it goes. There's a man by the name of Asher. Asher was having a tough time. By the way, it's a true story. I verified it with the person that it didn't happen to. And I asked somebody, did it happen to you? He said, no, it happened to somebody else. Asher had 5 daughters. They were all of marriageable age, and he couldn't get any of them out of the house. And Asher had a chavrusa, and his chavrusa had 1 daughter, and she went out with the guy, and she got engaged like that. And Asher's chavrusa says, Minhag Yerushalayim is you got to buy the son-in-law an apartment in Yerushalayim, and I don't have the money. And I'm not asking you for the money, but do me a favor. I'm going to take a loan from the bank. You be the arev, you be the cosigner. So Asher said, no problem. He figured it would be zechus for him, so he's the cosigner. The guy defaults on the loan. The bank comes to Asher. Asher doesn't have a penny to his name. And the bank comes and takes away Asher's house. So now Asher has 5 daughters, and now he was able to get them out of the house because the bank took away the house. But he wasn't able to marry them off. And he's down and out. He's really depressed. He doesn't know what to do with himself. His friend says, why don't you go to the Ger Rebbe, the Beis Yisrael? Maybe he could help you. He said, what's the rabbi going to do for me? He's not going to marry off my daughters. He's not going to give me money. His friend said, just speak to him. You never know. So Asher goes to the Beis Yisrael, and the Beis Yisrael says, Asher, I hear your problem. You got to marry off your kids, and you need to put yourself on stronger financial standing. But I have a question for you. Do you daven? So Asher says, yeah, I daven all day. Ribono shel olam, help me find shidduchim for my kids. Help me get some parnasa. No, the Beis Yisrael. I asked you if you daven, not if you ask Hashem for what you want. So he said, Rebbe, I don't understand what you mean. Do you thank Hashem every day? So this is not exactly what Asher wanted to hear. He came to the Rebbe for help. Came to the Rebbe for some support. He wasn't looking for Musar. And he said, well, I try, I this, I that. And he walked out, and that was the end of the meeting. Asher meets his friend, and his friend said, how was the meeting with the Rebbe? He said it was terrible, it was a disaster. What did the Rebbe tell you? He said, I need to thank Hashem. You think that's what I wanted to hear? What am I supposed to thank Hashem for? I have no money, I have no shidduchim. So the friend turned on him. Asher, you're in good health. You have a good wife. You have good children. Everyone's healthy. You have clothing. Do you thank Hashem regularly for the daily blessings Hashem gives you? So Asher says, well, not exactly. He says, what is your kavana in Shemona Esrei? When you add tefillos to Shemona Esrei, what are you mechavein? I'm mechavein. Hashem should give me money, and Hashem should give me shidduchim. Yeah, but do you add special kavanas for the brachos Hashem gives you to thank Him? So his friend said, what exactly did the Ger Rebbe tell you? He said, I'll tell you the truth. The Ger Rebbe told me a formula. The formula is 60% of my tefillos that I add need to be thanking Hashem, and only 40% should be asking Hashem. So the friend says, so why don't you try that? Why don't you try that? And sure enough, Asher tried that, and within a short while, his friend won a big Yerusha, and the first daughter got married, and 3 months later, he had married off 3 children, and as you could imagine, the story ended happily ever after. However, Asher then was wondering, where did the Ger Rebbe get this from? That 60% of the tefillah should be thanking Hashem, and 40% of the tefillah should be asking Hashem. And it came to Hallel, and Asher realized in Hallel, we say, Haidu Lashem ki tov ki li'olam chazdai. 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 Ana Hashem hoishiana. Ana Hashem hoishiana. Ana Hashem hatzlichana. Ana Hashem hatzlichana. Haidu Lashem ki tov ki li'olam chazdai. Haidu Lashem ki tov ki li'olam chazdai. 6 times we thank Hashem. 4 times we ask Hashem. And that is a ratio which is a game changer for most people. Most people, when they daven to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, their tefillah in terms of quantity and quality, in terms of what they add to the Shemona Esrei, and in terms of what they put emphasis and effort and heart into, is 99% what they're asking from HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and they would be lucky if on a good day is 1% thanking Hashem for what Hashem gave them. Says the Ger Rebbe, 60% thanking HaKadosh Baruch Hu, 40% asking HaKadosh Baruch Hu. The purpose of all the mitzvahs in the Torah, above and beyond any specific havana, is shenamin b'HaKadosh Baruch Hu v'noid elai, is to believe in Hashem and to thank Him. The purpose of creation, if you wanted to know, you made the trip down here today. I don't mean to Rabbi Weinfeld Shul on Ellen 22nd. You made the trip down from Tachas Kisei HaKavod, where the neshama originates. And you made it down from Olam HaAtzilos, and then through the Olam HaBriya, and then the Olam HaYitzira, and then down with 2 feet down here on this world for a short stint. And you want to know, what am I doing here? What is my tachlis in Olam Hazeh? The answer is to be able to say, Hashem, I acknowledge that you created me and you sustain me. Thank you so much. That's the purpose of everything. And then the question is there any act that we do the whole year that's entire purpose is just an expression of that? Not a philosophical reason, not at the core, but that's the definition of the mitzvah? We have one mitzvah. The Gemara says there's a mitzvah of Chanukah to thank Hashem. The Rambam says there's a mitzvah on Chanukah to light the menorah. Says the Riyaz, it's the same mitzvah. Moidim al hanes al yedei hadlakas ner Chanukah. And if we're able to light the menorah with that kavanah, Amar Rav Huna, haragil bener havin le banim talmidei chachamim. May HaKadosh Baruch Hu grant us siyata d'shmaya that we should light the menorah with the proper kavanos. And even if you're not the one lighting the menorah, but the ikar mitzvah is not the lighting the menorah, it's the feeling and hargasha of gratitude. So if you supply that, you too will be zoicha to the bracha of Amar Rav Huna. Haragil bener havin le banim tamei chacham. HaKadosh Baruch Hu should bless all of us. Banim uvnei banim oiskim etar v'mitzvahs afreil chen Chanukah. If anybody is interested in the Sefer on Chanukah in English or the new Sefer on Shemos, it's available in the back. Thank you very much. Yes, sure.
You've just experienced another Torah class brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.